Welcome back, everyone, to the final session of Streaming Media Connect 2025. It's been a great week, and we have one more amazing panel for you. My name is Steve Nathans Kelly. I'm the editor of Streaming Media and the chair of Streaming Media Connect, and it's my great pleasure to welcome you all to Localize It, AI subbing and dubbing for live streams at scale. We're going to get started with a panel in just a minute, but before we do, for anyone who doesn't know already, we're going to be doing a giveaway at the end of the panel, and the first person who correctly identified the music you heard as we were coming in, and a lot of people did, so I'm going to have to scroll up and figure out who got it first. But first person to correctly identify the track and the artist, who is also here at the end of the session, will win a $50 gift card from Amazon. But you must be present to win. So chat in the chat as always, and if you have questions for the panel, we will take audience Q&A at the end. So put your questions in the Q&A box. And sessions from all 3 days of Streaming Media Connect are already appearing on the Streaming Media YouTube channel. The link for that is in the chat. And we will be back here February 24th to 26th for Streaming Media Connect 2026. So we hope you'll join us all for that. The website for that will go up probably toward the end of next week. And the call for speakers is open now. And as soon as we finish here today, I'll start working on the program for that one. So send in your ideas to the call for speakers if you want to speak, if you want to, if you have a topic for us, just send all that in. And I look forward to seeing what you all come up with, and it would be great to have you involved. And I think that's everything. So it is now my great pleasure to welcome to the stage Allan McLennan, PADEM Media Group. Welcome, Allan. Are you out there?
There we are. Yeah, thank you.
There you
Thank you
are.
for having us.
Okay. Well,
And I'm going to
it's
ask
all yours.
everybody, I'm going to ask everybody on the panel to join me right this time. And, one of the things, Steve, like you said, you didn't know this, but you mentioned that this is the last panel session of this particular Connect. There's nothing like being the closers. Okay. All we had to do is take a look at that with the Dodgers, right? It's like pulling it together and putting it all out into the marketplace of how we're approaching it. And we have someone join us that we have not had a chance to really interact with, and that's Akshat. Um, it's nice for you to join us.
Yeah, nice to meet you, Allan.
Thank you. And one of the things is we have a panel here that's closing this out that is really, in my opinion, is the top. If you know me, you know my name. I'm fortunate enough to be a participant in this community worldwide, and these that are on the panel right at the moment. Andy Beach is exceptional. I don't even know where to start on the background of Andy, except that everybody that you may or may not know, Andy was the CTO for media and entertainment for Microsoft for a decade. And in the course of that, the exposure that he has had and the evolution of our industry is unheralded. It's very strong. Um, what we also have is Anton Dvorkovich, who is the founder and basically creator of Dubformer, which, if you know Dubformer, they're basically, as I've used in our little opening conversations, has been like the canaries in the coal mine. They've been testing it. They've been working on things worldwide on how you actually can engage with viewers and audiences in a way that they want to. And then Phil Grossman is, again, another one of these scientists that has pulled together the impact of intelligent localization and capabilities when it comes to enhanced programming. And, the backgrounds on each one of these executives are something that I would really reinforce everyone to go take a look at, because it's something that I'm just pleased and honored to be able to just kind of stumble along in the conversation and lead this in some sort of manner. Myself, Allan McLennan, I've been in this industry, as I alluded to, for a number of years. I'm also the founder and president of PADEM Media Group. PADEM stands for Pure Advanced Digital Entertainment and Media. It's been in the market for over 20 years. and it's global. And as an analyst community, as well as myself in running organizations um, with firms and with teams throughout the world. So, with that, what I'm going to do is really kind of kick this off with um, how important is AI subtitling and dubbing? How important is it really? And it's really something that um, we take for granted, don't we? I mean, you go to YouTube, YouTube automatically just puts up the subtitling. There it is. You go within other forms of entertainment, from live sports, live news, there's the subtitling. You even can have that on your Zoom calls. But really, where it all boils down to is, how do you engage the audience and how do you accurately compel emotions from them of their attachment to what they're watching and what they're interacting with. You know, I'm going to kick this off with Andy. Andy, we've been growing and evolving within the industry for years in trying to figure out how to best connect cultures up with subtitling. And that's regional,
Yeah.
geographically driven. But are we starting to look at something new and different when it comes to connecting live and news into new forms of localization, new types of interaction? Are you
Yeah.
sensing some of that?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think the tech has continued to mature and the latency has gotten to a point where even AI can help assist on the live feeds so that if you're in a scale position or a scale role where you're managing a lot of different channels, you can actually leverage it. And we were talking a little earlier about the fact that there's also opportunity outside of just the cultural localization that we're used to going on, which has gotten even better and crisper, so that we've got very regional Spanish, very regional French that goes into it as a possibility. But now we can also do cultural localization as well, so that we're adapting it to your particular area, your particular generation, or your particular age range, so that it's even more consumable. I had mentioned earlier the notion that my 82-year-old mother-in-law and my 15-year-old daughter are not going to want to watch the same version of something, because one of them is going to be lost in the language. But they can technically get their own versions at this point that are a little more specific to them. And we've even got AI that will help do better lip sync along the way as part of it.
But you're raising a point. And guys, trust me, I'm going to get to everybody here. Um, where's it learning this? How does it, this is pretty common sense stuff, right? But where does it go and kind of learn these kinds of ways of interpretation?
So there's obviously always a large language model that's attached for a very generalized training weight that you're going to get out of it. But the best models, or the best direction that I've seen for particularly live captioning, is when you can front load a lot of the additional source. So if it's sports that you're talking about, make sure you've got all the names in there, the team names, the the maybe the oddball pronunciations of an athlete's name that might not be common. Preload all of that into some sort of augmented retrieval, so that you've got that in there. The same goes when you're localizing for particularly like cities. The exact same spelling is going to be said three different ways across the country at some point, and you want to make sure that you're saying it right for your area that you're in, regardless of it. And so those little pieces don't have to be part of the LLM. They can be a secondary data source that you go retrieve from and pull from. And all of that's gotten much faster as a way to pull this together, so that you're not waiting on a big model to be updated in order to take advantage of it.
Yeah, I'm just going to roll right over to Anton, because you've been doing this worldwide in multiple regions, geographics, areas, languages. Is that what you've been building? I mean, is that what you've been interpreting?
Yeah, so with Dubformer, it's a bit less about captions and a bit more about dubbing and voiceover. So our kind of view and our mission is about creating content that can really connect with audience on emotional level. And even though subtitling is quite popular and has a fair niche within the world, but I think there's been growing demand for dubbing and voiceovers, and we've been seeing several experiments and nicely set up tests where, for example, voiceover was compared to subtitling in terms of audience engagement, and we see that it does create better engagement. So this is where we're focusing our attention, so trying
Yeah.
to build something emotional.
This is where I wish I had on my laptop. I could just cue, a Godzilla film from like 25 years ago and have the lack of associative mapping of the face, the lips towards the content. Your technology is really taking it to a whole new level where you're able to really, map it to that area, and that's known as reanimation, and moving that over into Nick. You've been pounding this within the media and entertainment space with your new technologies, um, and how this is approaching with Google. And so I would really like to hear your insight on that kind of evolution. We're training the models, we're mapping the faces. How is that playing out and what you're experiencing now?
Yeah, thanks, Allan. And just to give everyone some background, I'm sitting on our go-to-market team, so I'm really in between kind of sales, product, and research. And what we are trying to figure out is within the media entertainment space, like what do our customers want in terms of like API access? So I heard Andy and Anton talk a lot about the different approaches to localization. We are really thinking about it in like three distinct buckets. There's captioning and subtitling, there's dubbing, and then there's this whole like facial mapping and reanimation bucket as well, which is most complex but also the most exciting. When it comes down to the models and approaches for the subtitling and captioning bucket, I think it's been super interesting just over the past 6 months because we've seen a shift on customers needing to fine tune an open source model and set up the infrastructure and the teams to go do that, to the frontier world models being able to compete in terms of quality of output. So, what that means is basically customers have a choice. Do they want to go down the road of fine tuning, or do they want kind of the ease of use of just kind of video in, text out of a world model? On top of that, lastly, we're working on building kind of the scaffolding around these APIs to really give customers a solution where they can just kind of go play in one place. But I'm sure we're going to touch on all of those different buckets I mentioned, but the captioning and localization one, is the most exciting to me right now because it's just changing so rapidly right in front of us.
Well, that though is kind of a given in entertainment. You want your audience to be able to be connected in, and we've evolved to that capability, as I just kind of jokingly alluded to back, as we all can remember, with the initial, Japanese Godzilla films, and the becoming very funny now, but with the capabilities of dubbing into play, that is television, that is programming, isn't it? I mean, subtitling is a given, and that from an AI standpoint is a straightforward, high level accuracy, whether it's character or whether it's, alphanumeric capabilities. The dubbing, on the other hand, is really critically important.
Well, can I ask
I
a question, Alan? You talk about the subtitling, and obviously dubbing is very important, but I think a large driver of subtitling initially was the legal requirement. How accurate? I remember, again, back at the Weather Channel days, we were 24/7 live television. We had to have human beings doing all the subtitling for us. And it was hey, when can we automate this? When can we automate this? And the accuracy had to be, I think at the time it was like 98% or 97% or something like that.
Sure.
I think we've shot way past that now, and that's driven it. So now the next question is, do we think that legal requirements are going to start pushing the dubbing world? I mean, subtitling obviously for accessibility, but I'm wondering how much of the legal aspect will start to fade in or become part of, well, now you've got to have it in all these languages.
Well, that's culturally driven, like
Yeah.
anything else,
So
and when it comes down to, let's just say, censorship in the different parts of the world, yeah. But you raise a really good point when it comes to news, and that's where we're going to get to when it comes to live streaming, news, sports, this kind of area. But we're let's kind of get into that in just a second. Let me ask. You know, uh, Ashkat, what's your opinion about this? This is the first time we've heard from you, so it'd be nice
yeah,
to hear a little bit about your opinion. And just before we go too far on this
Mhm.
call, let me just let everybody know how far everyone is apart. I'm in California, Nick's in LA, which is another part of the world. you know, Andy's up in the Northwest in Portland, Oregon. Anton's in London. And Ashkat, give me specifics of where you're at.
I'm always between New York and Dubai. Currently, I'm in Dubai, and I couldn't find a better place to celebrate New Year, so I'll be here for the rest of the year.
Oh,
Uh,
fantastic.
and it's very, very, very cool to be amongst all of you. I think just the point Philip was bringing up. I think subbing and dubbing has always been looked at as this, especially in live, this second-class citizen feature. That you want it for accessibility. CAMB.AI really we've made our name in is a lot of live sports dubbing. Nobody does it like us. We power multilingual dubbing for all of the sports leagues today that do it. And what we see from a sports rights perspective is that it's not actually legal driving it, but it's actually sports rights and advertisements and sponsorships that are driving it. Sports leagues have woken up to the reality of how much money they're leaving on the table by not expanding globally. Sports leagues, especially folks like the NBA, MLB, MLS, some of these leagues we already work with. For them, not being able to do multiple languages means they're basically cutting off 90% of their territorial
Oh,
advantage.
interesting. Interesting.
And that's where really CAMB.AI comes in. So while I think there's one corner of the industry that still believes this place is in experimentation, but CAMB.AI kind of leading in the sports world has shown, we've already shown north of 500 million views on live feeds by dubbing them. So there are serious, serious numbers that beyond legal, beyond being nice to fans, sports leagues are waking up that if you're not doing it, you're already old news, right?
You
So
know,
that's our perspective where we come from it. It's actually going to be economically driven, which is going to be great for the industry in the long term, great for fans in the long term, and great for everybody.
So I have a question along those lines because obviously it's great to have the sporting event in a foreign language because then people can enjoy it. But the reality is they need to make money. So now I can have advertising
Yep.
associated now with that language. And I know there's some camera companies. I've done some work with Red Digital Cinema, and they've got their camera that can do alternating fields, and so they can have the multiple languages. Are you finding that that the language side also bleeds into okay, how do we do advertising now, taking this ability with
Yeah, that's
second language?
100%. Yeah, so just for context, like we've actually shown this in live streaming. So NASCAR's Mexico City race this year was originally going to just be done in English, but we live subbed and dubbed it entirely in Spanish, and you could hear the Spanish commentators screaming. And I mean, we really perfected sports dubbing to that level where fans can enjoy it, and you see an entire Twitter thread of fans enjoying it and whatnot. So what was eye-opening there is not only the performance of the AI that we've built, but actually there were like 50 ads in between, and all were hyper-localized as well into Spanish, right? That's where you
on
start
the
to
fly,
see
on the fly.
all on the fly. And that's where the economical magic comes in, right? You start to get all these ad revenue as well in multiple languages. But since you also have language feeds in different languages, you actually maintain the Scuddy 35 markers and whatnot. As you start to see viewership grow, you can inject hyper localized ads. So maybe the same soap that you're selling in English, just dubbing it won't cut it, but there's a very cool local Spanish brand or Mexican brand that you want to sell. And that's something you can inject. So we've already started showing viewership to the level of in the hundreds of millions, where it now makes clear sense for leagues to really over-index on this and go full on, because the types of numbers we're talking about in other languages, to give you an example, a language like Bengali is spoken by roughly the same number of people as the speakers in Russian and Portuguese combined. And suddenly, when you open up soccer to Bengali fans, you're talking about changing the economics of how leagues work, right? And this is just the very beginning of, like, yeah, ad revenue is the first, but then the downstream effects are so much more. Like, it's truly universal fandom then.
What Phil was talking about earlier, though, is pretty important when you're doing that dubbing, is sort of the accuracy of the local. I know early on in some of the testing, I played around with some of the live models, particularly for Polish. Shooting the ball literally was firing a pistol into the ball, and that's not the experience you want to dub to another language, because they are going to be pulled out of the experience. So you want to make sure you're getting the right context, and there's a lot of idioms that don't immediately translate, that you need that extra time, that extra little help to get it nuanced into the local language.
I have an interesting anecdote around that, the accuracy that I was amazed at, and where I was doing experimenting and testing a translation. The interview was done in Russian. The people that were talking to were in Russian. The person asking the questions, though, was Polish. Polish and Russian are very similar in nature in the way they say things. Good day is dzień dobry in Polish, and in Russian it's dobry dzień. And the AI was able to understand, based on the person who was asking the questions was Polish, trying to speak Russian. When it identified them in the AI, it did it in Roman characters, but it knew that the other person was speaking in Russian, so it was in Cyrillic characters. So the level of that ability it was mind blowing to me, to see how it can now detect that nuanced differences. Now, I don't know if it would still say shoot the ball, meaning with a gun, but it did pick that up, which I thought was amazing.
Anton, you've been doing this also, and that interpretation to complement Akshat. Are you finding this to be the case too? Are you seeing this need, this driver, when it comes to the advertising aspect? I mean, it's an obvious question and it's an obvious answer, but what are you finding right now, Anton?
Yeah, first I wanted to maybe allude to something that we just discussed about the quality and mistranslations, and especially in connection with live dubbing and live translation. Of course, with live, there's always this trade-off between the delays, how many seconds of delay you can allow, and the quality of translation, because different languages are structured differently. I mean, Polish and Russian are pretty close in the ways how sentences are built. But if you're trying to translate from English into German or Japanese, you have to wait until the end of sentence, or at least the end of logical clause, to understand if there's a negation, and to understand the actual subject and object. So what I'm saying is that if you're able to maintain a delay of, say, 10 seconds or 15 seconds, then the quality of live translation can be as high as any machine translation that you get. And the large language models that we have today, they're able to use all kinds of all kinds of context. As was mentioned, names of the teams, names of players, but also recent events, different kind of glossaries. They can do cultural adaptation along with translation as well. I guess what I'm saying, in most of use cases, usually broadcasters can tolerate the delay of under 1 minute, which is in our experience. And in this case, when we talk about accuracy in terms of like mistakes and mistranslations, they can be really brought down to a very little number. But we have to care about accuracy in terms of like naturalness of speech and correct emotions and stuff like that. And this is where some work is to be done just yet. But on the main question that you asked, I agree 100% with what Akshat shared. I see that the biggest driver for localization and the biggest driver for AI dubbing is the economic interest of companies. So it's very similar in live sports, and the same for live news, and the same for VOD content as well. Just most of the videos, most of films, movies, series today are not localized into any kind of languages, and this creates a lot of opportunity to just bring content to bigger audiences. And I like that finally broadcasters and media producers see this economic opportunity. It was really hard before without AI, because like the traditional localization industry has quite a limited throughput, and you just cannot scale traditional localization 100 times like you would want. And AI is starting to open these kind of doors.
The thing that you just raised, as far as, and you guys jump in on me on this, we're talking about preciseness, accuracy, and to what level is really accuracy accurate? In my experience, working within the APAC, 95 to 98% was pretty darn good when it came to, kind of the interactions of the audiences. But isn't the charm of a broadcast in live, an announcer, a sportscaster, their little bits of inaccuracies,
I
and misinterpreting, something, and actually having a little bit of humor on that. So, as we go to AI, everything is 100% accurate. It's got to be perfectly, correct. Is that really what we're looking? Is that really what the audience is actually looking for?
Definitely not.
First of all, I don't think you'd ever get a data scientist to tell you it's 100% accurate.
I have
I would,
a I have
I
a
would
hot
agree. I would agree.
I
We
have
keep
a
looking for that.
Yeah, I have a hot take on this. Like, whenever people talk to me about accuracy, I immediately know that they haven't done live subbing or dubbing before. Because honestly, I've written research papers all my life. I was at CMU, I was at Apple. We were always publishing. I, as an academic, can tell you that numbers look good on paper, but numbers on accuracy mean nothing in the real world. I think the true test of technology, especially AI technology, they're so end-to-end, so performant, so emotive, so many nuances to it. The only kind of measure you can make is run it live and see what the viewers say on Twitter.
Yeah, it's audience engagement.
That's your measure of accuracy, right? And
You
I
can
think
simulate it to some degree. You can simulate it in an environment, but it has to be human-based evaluation.
Well, more
yeah,
importantly, what is accuracy? And I'll give you an
yep.
example.
Yeah, that's the question.
I translated a Russian statement. It said, "We used to come here and buy 3 kilograms of ice cream." When it translated it to English, it said, "We used to come here and buy 6 pounds of ice cream." So not only did it do English, but also went from metric to imperial. Is that correct? Is that accurate, or is it not? Should you have kept it as the English word 3 kilograms, since that's what there's,
And
so
and
defining what is accurate.
it's a beautiful thing you bring up, because on some traditional metrics that might actually give you a lower score,
Yeah.
and your mind will be
Yep.
boggled,
Yeah.
and versus where it's actually like a beautiful translation, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think AI, especially even outside of dubbing and subbing, is just one of those technologies that you have to deploy and get right rather than get right and deploy. Most of the market today, enterprise, have been buying technology that you get right and then buy. But we've had the privilege of working with a lot of sports leagues that have deployed and then gotten it right with CAMB. And I think that's just the right approach if you want to see like a reasonable scale to actually making this meaningful.
Yeah, and you're bringing up a really good point, Gascon. It is, and what's the audience, and what's the programming? I mean, Phil, you alluded to, the Weather Channel. I'm a sailor. and if I'm not getting the right information to be able to get out of the water, it's like that's a problem. And so accuracy is part of that way of interpreting and being able to deliver. Like when I'm flying, when I'm over, in the different parts of the world, and trying to get the local broadcast over the weather, it's hard. Sports, not so much. But the interpretation of that is really key. And where I'm going with this is the legalities of that. The legalities of the Weather Channel, the legalities of the cultural engagement in, for example, APAC, where censorship comes into play. Nick, are you facing this around the world? Are your customers and your research coming into this when it comes to what Andy brought up, which was very appropriate, and that is legalities, engagement needs, audience reflection, responses. What's happening in that space?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think it across all of the different customers that I support, it really depends on the use case. People are going after a bunch of different use cases at the same time. So where you might see like localization and dubbing happening in short form video that kind of ends up on maybe YouTube Shorts, that's much different than what a news channel, maybe like CNN, will want in terms of accuracy and where they're dubbing it in which market. So again, I think there's really a lot of the human in the loop aspect that comes into this. It is not a fully automated pipeline across every industry and every vertical. And people are really trying to figure out what's the best place to use this technology right now in the markets that we can.
Well, looking for the best use, isn't that just audience engagement?
It could be, but again, if you are a news channel and like your mandate and your promise to the people is upholding the truth in the way it was originally done, engagement may not be the number one metric you go after. It could be all about accuracy and does it adhere to the original content and the meaning.
So the original content, coming back to that, we've been really kind of drilling into live news, live sports, which is really the growing area to be able to engage audiences. But yet we also need is having that library content, that legacy content to be interpreted, to be able to provide someone's choice. And from experience, if you're going to take a library and convert it all, localize it to 60 different languages, it's pretty much the only company out there that's actually ever done that up until a couple of years ago is Disney, because their reach of their entertainment stack was really key. But to do it is extremely costly, very very prohibitive. So now we're starting to do. Are we going to get to a point where someone's going to be able to take a legacy piece of content that hasn't been translated and that could be potentially tapped by a member of the audience in an area that we as an industry could theoretically um, dub it? And Anton, you mentioned before, like you're kind of given the grace of like 20 seconds to be able to get something that's being able to be delivered. Is this also where we might be able to be, that we might be going? Are
Of
we
course,
looking at that?
100%. Yeah, that's a big chunk of what we're doing today as well. So library content, and there are some advantages when you deal with library content uh, because there's no time limitations with live. Uh, you can spend a bit more time and a bit more human in the loop work to get content uh, to convey emotions really in a great way, fear, laughter, sarcasm, stuff like that. And this is how you can get really high-end content. This is what we're seeing quite a bit. So my
So I have a
vision, yeah,
go ahead. Sorry.
But
My
but
question
but
is
but Phil, but Phil, Phil, before you get
yeah.
to that though, back to
Mhm.
Anton, that wasn't my question. My question was if I happen to be in Norway and there's a Norwegian piece of content that's coming and it hasn't been dubbed, the legacy piece of content hasn't been dubbed, are we going to get to a point where I'm going to be able to select that piece of content? It might be
exactly.
and then it will be dubbed for me.
Yes. 100%. This
There
is
is the
moving and really quickly.
And that's the
So
audience builder. That comes back to Akshat, his
yeah.
comment about his massive reach of what he's currently doing. This is engaging audiences worldwide to be affected by what they're seeing and what they're participating in.
So when you're
Allan,
doing go ahead.
yeah, sorry. No, go.
I was
Philip, go
going
ahead.
to say one of the things. So I have a question around the dubbing. Are you just picking a generalized actor, or are you trying to dub in that person's voice? And where I'm going with this is this is anecdotal to some extent, but there's a large YouTuber who dubs into Spanish, and the company that dubs into Spanish for them, the voice that does the Spanish was the same voice that did Tom Cruise in Maverick. And so they got unbelievable engagement because the local language recognize the voice is our ultimate goal, though. And of course, you run into the legalities. Well, if you dub Tom Cruise's voice and now you have him speaking in German, does Tom get paid for it, or any actor? I mean, there's that line again. It seems that the laws will be driving this, but in your dubbing stuff, are you finding that you're just using a voice that's close enough, or are you trying to actually use the actor's voice?
Well, it's a great question. It's a quite a big topic for discussion. So we have the privilege of being on the service and technology side on that. So basically, we do both things, or rather, we do all the three things. We can use library voices. We can use completely artificial and synthetic voices that do not belong to anyone. We can clone the original actor's voice, or we can clone any other actor's voice, and we can use any of that. And that's really the customer that decides where they want to go with every piece of that. But it's been a big topic of discussion, and basically it's an interesting. So there is going to be a very interesting balance in the future, I think, because on one hand, actors and like people who created original performance and whose voice has been used to train models or to clone their voices, they ought to get paid for that. But if they're demanding too much pay, companies are just gonna go and use completely synthetic voices. But they won't use completely synthetic voices for all the content all the time, because there's value attached to the voice, as you correctly alluded. And we as audiences we like to know that there's a bigger picture, even maybe beyond the movie that we're watching. We like to know that, okay, that's a real actor. In real life, he's dating this person and she's dating this person, and they just had this scandalous story and stuff like that. This is all part of the global kind of entertainment thing.
And no
So
offense to Gilbert Godfrey, but I would not want to hear those who are American know Gilbert Godfrey's voice for an entire movie either.
So this is where I loved what Andy you brought up at the start. True localization is generative in nature. It's not copying in nature. Actually, I have a slightly orthogonal view. I grew up, I mean, watching dubbed films. Voice cloning started off as a very, new sexy thing. But unfortunately, when you get to scale, when you get to practical dubbing, it means very little. Because if you're watching like an English movie dubbed in Japanese, the Japanese voiceover should actually not sound anything like how that English actor was, because it's not going to sound authentic at all. And so I see the industry, at least on the VOD side, we're moving away more and more from the charm of like, oh, it sounds like the same actor. Okay, and everyone can do that today. To more like, okay, this actually sounds like how I grew up watching dubbed films. And I think that is the point where the acceptance rate on dubbed VOD content is going to skyrocket when it's just like how I watched it growing up, right? And I think there's nuances there to not only understand like how to do it from technology, but also culturally, right? And that's why you're going to see so many companies approaching so many different content domains, but also specializing in certain languages. Because I think Anton will also tell you this, like nobody in the world can claim doing 150 languages as accurately as possible. but you can actually get good at a few languages very, very deeply and create a lot of revenue because you're really good at those languages.
Yeah, my experience on that is about 28, and that works. That's the size of the markets. That's the economics, that come behind that and where and how you're going to reach it. But you've raised all of this has raised a really interesting point to me, and that is this is kind of the underlying basis of the SAG-AFTRA strike. When it comes back down to the misrepresentation of the actors within the AI environment, and as it comes into play, we're leaving one thing off the table, and I want to come back to you, Akshat, and with this as well, Anton. Um, you're right. You don't really need to have the actor's voice accurately portrayed, but they have actually created the brand. They are actually who the film is all about. The leads, but the director has an input on this. And this is where it comes down to dubbing. And this is when, let's say, I can't believe I'm saying this, the old style of dubbing, which is in the studio, is having the director there, having the linguists that are coming in to be able to put that down, to have it be accurate. But there is a certain level of direction that has to come into play. And I'm wondering, um, do you have that capability currently in the dubbing factor of
Yeah,
directing? Yeah. Okay. Let's go into
exactly.
that. Let's go into that being the director with a technical solution.
Yeah, so this is exactly what we're building as well for non-live content. The idea is that when you talk about higher end content and dubbing, it's about creating uh, creating almost like a piece of art. Dubbing is of course not the whole movie. So dubbed audio track is less sophisticated than the whole movie, but it's still part of the artistic expression. So what we're trying to build are creator tools where you can actually direct AI voices and make AI dubbing sound exactly as you want it, because there's thousands and thousands of different ways to say something correctly and accurately, but there's just every other director would choose different way to do it and to deliver it. And we can, while improving AI models, we will be able to eliminate mistakes and maybe not to zero, but 0.000 something one. Uh, but what we will not be able to do is create an experience where you press on a button and you get the perfect result out there. Because perfect, there's no such thing as perfect. It's very subjective, and it's subjective to the creative person behind it. So the
So
instrument
how I was gonna
that
say,
we're building.
how do you handle something like singing? So I remember
Yeah.
from an NAB presentation on DCP, and they used Frozen, and they literally had the actress sing the song and do it, and then when they did the demo, they showed how they could basically switch from language to language as the person is singing. Do you find singing to be a more difficult challenge in the AI world?
Singing is definitely a big challenge because there's like you have to convey the rhythmic expression that might be really tricky with different languages and stuff like that. But in general, yeah, there's three mechanisms how you can control AI voice generation. There's like the very coarse one where you switch a bunch of settings, and you can, for example, you can switch accent to different region, or you can switch acoustic environment or something like that. But the two more powerful tools to control it is with prompting, which could be either textual prompting or audio prompting. So textual prompting is more about uh, like a human dubbing director would say. So please say the same, but with more energy. Say it faster. Maybe emphasize a different kind of thing and stuff like that. And voice prompting is usually about, well, repeat after me. So basically, use my intonation, use my pitch, listen to how I sing it, and do the same.
This brings
So
me
you'd
back over to
actually
this brings
there's
me over to Nick. Actually, real quick, Akshat, if I could jump in
yeah.
there. Nick, you're providing basically an intelligent API, to be able to respond to these kinds of directions. Is this what you're starting to see within the industry? In and of that, is that the technologist is becoming the director of this intonation and capability, but it's leveraging the API that you have?
Very much so. And I love the way that Anton phrased it, where it's like it really is art at the end of the
Oh yeah,
day. And
yeah,
it's not
very
going to
much.
be one click of a button and get it to the exact place that you want it in every language. And I think some of the points that Anton was bringing up kind of really goes into the complexities of how to do this properly. So, yes, Google has APIs, but what we are really seeing from our customers is when you get into dubbing in different languages, there's all this nuance that happens and all these like tweaks that you need to make for maybe assigning emotions to particular words if it didn't come out the right way, or changing like pitch and tone. And this is where you really see kind of like a team of people come together to make the final product as close to the original art that happened in the first place. Or if, like, let's say they want to take it a different direction for a different market, they have the ability to kind of make those tweaks. So we're kind of working on our own platform that allows people to do that. But very much today, it's just the APIs. So Anton, I'm happy you're working on the same things.
I just visualize living in the South, having these dials. It's like a little more Texas, a little more Tennessee, a little less Georgia, add in a little Alabama. And so, all right, now I got the perfect
Definitely.
accent.
Yeah, it's see for us West Coast guys, it's all the same.
It's really a new profession that's being created. It could be on a from more technical standpoint, it could be called a proof listener, or it can be we like to call it an AI dubbing director. So this
So
is a
how?
person that
So what?
Before we go to
Go
that,
ahead.
Phil, I want to pull Askat back in because you're about ready to say something, Askat. And one of the things I think that's been really compelling, and thank you for sharing, was your firsthand experience growing up and what you were exposed to and how you've taken that and applied that to your company and to your reaching across different cultures with your dubbing and your capabilities. Tell us a little bit more about that. What that is firsthand experience.
Yeah, I think some of us might have had similar experiences. So I grew up in India. I of course spoke English all my life, but I think we make a very big deal of language barriers when we don't even understand that people speaking English can be divided themselves. And the example I'll give you there is like even though I grew up speaking English, when I came to the US, I went to CMU in Pittsburgh for my undergrad. So the first time I went to order coffee, uh, the lady was speaking English, but it didn't sound like the English I had ever heard because it was in the American accent, was very new to me, and now I've gained a little bit of it too.
And there is
But
a Pittsburgh accent,
and there is
evidently.
a Pittsburgh accent, which is not it's the
Definitely.
hardest thing you can throw to a person just fresh on the boat, right? Um, and so it's in that moment that was very beautiful that I realized that even though we spoke English, the mere fact that we had a slight different accent made all the difference in us not being able to understand each other. And I feel that's just a very poignant moment in my life, like that I keep very dear to myself to be like, it's the world is so truly diverse when, yes, we're thinking about it as different languages, but you might not be able to understand your neighbor if they spoke a different accent of English. And I think that in my opinion, that beautifully wraps up like how diverse this world is and how much we have a need for technology like this to win.
So I had a question around one of the issues that we in the generative AI in the image space is always the consistency. If I want to change just one thing, and when we get into the vocal side, it's sort of a similar thing. To your point, Anton. I want you to say this word this way or this. How are you finding? Are the models getting better? Is it more prompting to get to the point where three-quarters of the sentence is correct, but you use the wrong terminology for this word, and I just want that one word changed and not have it rewrite everything?
Yeah, of course. So it's exactly like that. So it's kind of a patchwork, and you wanna fix some things. consistency is a little bit of a challenge, but I would say it's almost solved nowadays, and you're able to work on individual details. And just the thing that I wanted to say that the quality of final output, generated output, we find out that it's as much about technology as it is about the like the quality of work of this AI dubbing director person that's actually does the tweaks and improvements and stuff like that.
Yeah, very much so. You know, the we could this is a fabulous conversation, gentlemen. Thank you for having this. You know, there's 2 points, and as Steve's put it out there, we are coming up on if there are questions out to the audience to be able to ask. But there's a couple things that have popped to mind. I missed many, but Akshat, you brought up a statement and a phrase that really I had to write down, and that is changing the economics. You know, and language interpretation and localization is in the prime position of changing economics worldwide to this point that we're talking. Each person has their own way of speaking. So how do you pull that together, and how do you create a large enough audience to be able to justifiably create content to be delivered? That's one. The second one was, as Nick pointed out, with Anton, and that is art. You know, and I wrote down there is no such thing as perfect, which comes back to our conversation. It is 100% really needed. You know, and you know, in this, I think that comes back to normalizing, or for the lack, I'm misusing this word, but humanizing AI, so it actually has inaccuracies to create this from a dubbing standpoint. These are two areas, economics and normalcy, accuracy, that I think is one thing that's been a common thread through this entire conversation. And it's really fascinating what we have been talking about, both from a historical perspective. Thank you, Phil, for bringing up what the evolution of the Weather Channel has been. Anton, how you've shaped all of this with Dubformer, and how your firsthand experience is happening. You know, when Ascot, my God, 500 million viewers. You know, that's a
There's a lot
serious
of
number.
people in the world.
What's that?
I said there's a lot of people in the world.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
yeah, there are a lot of people, but not watching every piece of content, like especially live, which you know puts me towards what we're going to be facing here in the next coming months. We've got FIFA World Cup coming up, and that reach at this time is, you know, becoming very apparent wherever you're at. You know, before it was just a sporting event. Now it is a cultural event, not just what's on the pitch. You know, and so having that capability of having the different languages available in each of the regions is, I think, is going to really push our category and our industry really up front on the importance. And then the politicians, of course, are going to get behind this and how this is going to move. And that then leads me to what, Nick, you're in the prime position of being able to serve this up from a technical standpoint and have the flexibility of being able to make that challenge of change come into play. And you know what I'd like to do is just kind of have an open floor here at the end of the last. You know, we've got 4 minutes until the end of our time here, and I'm sure there's going to be some Q questions that are going to be coming up. But is there anything that anybody would like to actually take this platform to be able to make a statement on? In regards to whether your companies or within what you're seeing in today's marketplace and the importance of what we provide on an ongoing basis.
I just, to your point of what is it? Don't let perfect be the enemy of the good. That's one thing that we're finding in a lot of what we do is as we run things through, every time we run something through the same image, the same video, we'll get slightly different results. But I think that's a good thing because that's how humans understand things, which indicates, you know, I've always said that it's actually AI is artificial imitation. That's really what we're doing. We're trying to look like humans, and I think that we just need to get to the point where, Prakash and Anton, it's close enough is good enough. There are those nuances. It just you have to be close enough.
I would say that it's also I agree with Akshat is that localization and dubbing is really about the generation. So we need at some point we need to stop thinking about making it exactly the same as the original and conveying everything that was in there originally. As we have to think about it as creating a related, similar piece of content, but it's a new piece of content because it's for the new audience. The new audience that's different, not just in terms of language, slightly different culturally, and in all these kind of ways.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Jar Jar Binks needs to be annoying in every language.
But maybe different
If I
levels
was
of
to, if I was to actually, it's a little bit of a orthogonal thought. If I was to leave one thought, actually, I'm I'm pretty comfortable that dubbing, even live dubbing, will be solved. But somebody's got to do something about the standards we have set on like live captioning. It feels like the industry is still 20 years backward and nobody's really like defined ways to even properly stream multilingual subtitles. And it honestly a little bit pains me. To that end, I mean, I feel there's just more collaboration needed on people working on this to actually come up with a standard because there is infinite content, but there's actually very, very poor, in my opinion, standards on multilingual captioning and how it's delivered today. Even the best of the best, when we work with them, it's like the way subtitling is working is basically a grand hack right now, and that needs to change.
You're raising a really good point, and that is behavior, human behavior. Really reluctant to change, and I'm sure you've dealt with SMPTE, from a standard standpoint. And that's very comfortable in the way everything's working right at the moment. So why disrupt it? You're raising a very key point, and that is we're in a role and we're in a position to now connect with every person in the world through media. And the way that we choose to do that is through language and through the ability to represent, whatever the emotions are with whatever that is being presented. That comes into language, it comes into visual quality of the content. All of that we're becoming very real in real time, and having a standard move forward that we could put ourselves into a commonality, I think is going to be really critical. You raise a very key point, and that's a whole other conversation that each of us have interest on, and we might want to bring this up on another time because I think we need to address that with the standards committees, because they're not thinking about that. They're thinking about the quality and the compression and all of the different types of capabilities they have to have, not the actual engagement. And that is going to be really key. Gentlemen, on all points of the world, this has been a fantastic conversation. Thank you. Akshat in Dubai, Anton in London, Andy in Portland, Phil in Atlanta, myself and Nick on the West Coast of the Americas, California. Thank you for taking the time and being in this conversation because I think this is just the tip of the iceberg for us. This has been really interesting. Thank you for providing your insights. It's been great.
Yeah. Thanks a lot, Allan.
Thanks
Really
for having
appreciate
me.
it.
Thanks,
Yeah.
Thank
everyone.
you. Bye. Nice to meet everyone.
Yeah,
Bye.
thanks so much to all of you. Thank you, Allan. And thanks to everyone who attended this week. This is our last session. And so I want to thank everyone who attended, everyone who spoke. This has been great. I also want to thank our amazing executive producer, Bill Spence. And I want to thank Joel Unico for all the fish. And we're going to be back here next year for Streaming Media 2026. But before we go, I just also want to announce our gift card winner. The first person to identify Run DMC's Christmas in Hollis was Jennifer Hip. Congratulations, Jennifer, and watch your email next week for instructions how to claim your prize. So again, thanks everyone, and happy holidays to all, and we will see you next year.
Yes. Happy holidays, everyone.
Take care.
Bye-bye. wonderful time for you and your family. Take care.